I think it tells us that we're in a simulation, and I think this is a part of the actual algorithmic code.
What astrology, and particularly asteroid astrology, forces us to reckon with is that our lives are far more fated than we like to think.
What does it mean that this angel energy crossed over his protective energy, like a guardian angel was coming through the sky at the time where he could have been killed?
Astrology is mind-blowing enough as it is, but asteroid astrology takes the weirdness up to 11. Once you start adding asteroids to your charts, you start to see strange things that challenge your notions about how reality really works. You start to wonder if we're living in some kind of quantum information processing machine. And this can also challenge your belief in free will, because asteroids can predict the very names of people who are going to be important to you in your life. And this has big implications for questions of fate and free will. Honestly, playing with asteroids will break your brain. And that's the kind of thing we like on this channel. So in this episode, I'm joined by the excellent Lori Lothian, who is a big advocate of asteroid astrology. And together, we're going to give you a primer on asteroids and show you how they can really blow your mind.
Like, you can't make this stuff up. This is my favorite phrase for asteroids. You can't make this stuff up. It's useful because it gives you a lot of recognition that you're moving in some kind of story that's a script. And while you have agency about how you respond to some of the characters that show up and some of the events that happen and some of the places you'll go and things that you'll do, it literally looks like you can relax a bit. Like, take your hands off the hypothetical wheel, not be so gripping control of your destiny, because maybe you don't have all the control.
This is World Astrology Report. I'm your host, Dan Waits, and welcome to another journey into the past to understand the present and the future. If you're enjoying this video so far, please do click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and even enable notifications to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Thanks. All right, let's just start off with a little introduction to asteroids. What are they, and why might you want to put them in your astrological charts?
Well, my phrase for asteroids is it's the devil is in the details. The ancient world did acknowledge the existence of an asteroid belt. There's different asteroid places they come from. There's the trans-Neptunians, we just kind of call them asteroids. But the actual asteroid belt itself, for example, sort of space rubble, maybe a smashed planet, maybe Tiamat from Sitchin and the Sumerians, that belt was understood to exist by the ancients, and they called it the daemons. I know that from Dimitri George, who's really looked into the history of asteroids, whether they were seen or understood by the ancients. Now, ironically, you really can't see them, and so that also leads us to wonder how they saw them. I've been fascinated by asteroids, particularly over the years, is that we keep naming them. So when I first started looking at them, there were 24,000 named asteroids. Now there's over 26,000 named by amateur astronomers and by professional astronomers. Everything from Susie to the name of your dog, Fred, to the name of a country like a Paris asteroid, a France asteroid, to names of deities from ancient traditions of various religions around the world. A lot of them are named after Greek mythic characters as well. And so we end up with sort of a dictionary that we can use, full of words, a whole inventory of logos, of words that we can throw into the sky. And there are softwares that let you throw them in, or you can go what I call asteroid hunting.
Here's how you can go about doing this. Think of the name of someone really important to you. For example, your spouse or a parent or child or close friend. Now head to astro.com. Then go to the Horoscopes tab and click Extended Chart Selection. Add your basic chart details, and then open the section that says Additional Object. Then click Asteroid Name Number List with 25,586 names. Yes, you can add that many asteroids to your charts these days. Now, try to find the name of the person you're looking for in the list. It might be that their exact name is there, in which case, great. Just click the checkbox next to it and then click to show the chart. It might be that you can't find the name, in which case look for words that sound very similar. For example, say you're looking for the name Matthew. There isn't actually an asteroid with that precise name, so choose asteroids with names that are close, like Matei and Matthias and Matti. Matthew is actually my brother's name, and if I do this, I find 2 of these 3 asteroids in my chart in Cancer, which is the 3rd whole sign house of siblings, and another one in Aquarius opposing my sun. Funnily enough, my brother's and Aquarius.
You are alarmed, surprised, and delighted when you do this, because you'll find in asteroid hunting mode that the people who have been very important to you by name will show up in a very close place to something like your sun, your moon, your midheaven for your career. They're going to be meaningful. I'll give you a short example of what I mean. Years ago, one of my clients was in the Ken Wilber organization, which is integral theory. And he works with Wilber within the inner circle, like second in command, third in command, really in that inner cloistered version of reality. Ken Wilber wrote The Theory of Everything. I put him into my room and I said, let's look for the asteroid Wilber. There is an asteroid Wilber. It is perfectly conjunct his midheaven. So he's going to work in a career position with someone named Wilber of great importance.
This can be completely mind-blowing. For example, the asteroid with my own mother's name is found almost exactly conjunct the IC in my chart. This is the point in the chart speaking to one's home and parents. And the asteroid named Daniel is right on the descendant of my girlfriend's chart. It's seriously crazy stuff. Many asteroids are named for gods and goddesses of major spiritual traditions. And they'll often speak to major themes and plot lines of your life that relate to the myths and stories that surround those figures.
I haven't had more than one sommelier client, right? I mean, who gets these? What I do, I love wine. So I get these sommelier clients in my life, or vintners, or people who own vineyards. And vintners, sommeliers, wine experts. One woman worked in the wine industry selling wine. These types of people will have Dionysius or Bacchus, the god of wine, Greek and Roman, god of divine ecstasy, but also the fermented beverage, on their career point. It's like, oh, look at that. The best sommelier I had Dionysius on one side and Bacchus on the other side of the midheaven. So do you take a little kid when they're like 6 and go, you're destined to work with the gods of wine, or the little boy who would work with Ken Wilber, and you say to that little kid, guess what? There's a really important guy named Wilber in your career future.
But you can also use asteroids for predictive work. They can show you things you'd never be able to see using other methods. Hello friends, before we go on, I just have a couple of quick announcements. The first is that I've just opened up a few new consultation slots. So if you'd like me to take a look at your chart, then please do take advantage of that. I'd love to talk to you in person and see how I can help you find purpose in life and make sense of where you are in time. Members of World Astrology Report get 20% off the usual membership fees, as well as all the usual benefits, including exclusive content and live streams. And speaking of live streams, at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, October the 25th, which is this coming weekend, we're holding this month's World Astrology Report members long-form live stream. People often ask me how I think astrology works. And in this stream, I'll be laying out my answer to this question and hopefully giving you some deeper understanding of how all this stuff we talk about on this channel actually happens. You can purchase entry on the live streams page of worldastrologyreport.com. But entry is free for website members and for YouTube members at correspondent tier. So do sign up if you want access to that stream and all my other streams and exclusive content. Thanks for listening. Now back to the video. Just as you can find asteroids in people's birth charts, you can also look them up by transit and see where they are in the sky at a given point in time. And this means that you can use them to make predictions about life events for individuals and even about world events, things in politics and geopolitics and you name it.
For a long while now, asteroid Child has been tracking with Chiron in the sign of war. And when Child got within 3 degrees of Chiron, we started to be openly acknowledging the starvation problem in the Middle East, right, in the Gaza war. And the focus of the world became the plight of children in a war zone. And that asteroid is still tracking with Chiron as we speak. And so in a time of war, in the sign of war, the wounds of war, Chiron, are now focused on the word child.
For example, let's take the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania on July the 13th of 2024. A lot of people observed that it was kind of miraculous that he survived that attack and even suggested that he must have had some kind of spiritual protection from a guardian angel, as this bonkers Japanese anime depicts.
When Donald Trump was apparently a bullet whizzed by his ear, and all of us astrologers, you, me, a lot of us saw some harm coming his way. We all pointed to that time frame of mid-July. And it was quite obvious just from the outer planets, like, Uranus, the midheaven, star Algol, Mars, and his squaring his ascendant. Anyone could have picked that up, who's a good astrologer, for him to be cautious. But what I didn't see until after the fact, because I wasn't looking for it, was that the asteroid Angel is traveling at the time of the near assassination really close to his ascendant. And the Mars in his first house, which is where, the energy of harm can come to him. And when he was born, the asteroid Angel's conjunct his moon in his fifth house. And now I'm not saying I like Donald Trump, for all of you who are just about to cancel culture me. I'm a Canadian and I'm an astrologer. I'm just observing that. I'm thinking, what does it mean that this angel energy crossed over his protective energy, like a guardian angel was coming through the sky at the time where he could have been killed, right? I mean, it was a close call.
You can also pay attention to when particular asteroids are forming conjunctions with important celestial bodies like the sun.
Like, you can't make this stuff up. This is my favorite phrase for asteroids. You can't make this stuff up. When people fall from the sky from helicopters that are downed, or planes that fall from the sky, and there's somebody of great renown on the plane, the asteroid Icarus, who fell from the sky with his melted wings, will always be involved. So, for example, a couple of years ago, there was a helicopter that went down in Iran, and there was a particular political figure in that helicopter, and the asteroid requiem on the sun at the time. I mean, asteroid Icarus. So I'm predicting someone's going to fall from the sky, and 2 weeks later or less, down comes the helicopter. So one thing I'd say is asteroids grieve, memorial service, requiem, a big famous funeral, libitina, are very easily found in the chart and often look like a big funeral and a death is coming. And you want to look to see who it could happen to. So you start thinking about world leaders who have placements close to this stuff, right? Like, oh, that's a world leader's son, or that's a world leader's ascendant. When the Pope was about to die, about a week before, I noticed in the chart some signatures, not even in his chart, just for the collective, to do with the asteroid for funerals, libitina. It was squaring Vesta, someone who's of a holy priest, pope, or nun kind of energy. I saw that the asteroid Memoria for memorial services was also conjunct the south node in Virgo, like a week before he died. And I was just looking at it and going, a sacred person of some merit is going to die. And Mother Teresa's already gone. So I jumped for the Pope because I couldn't think of who else it could be.
Good asteroid for viewers of this channel to pay attention to is Urania, the muse of astrology and astronomy.
Every time asteroid Urania, the muse of astronomy and astrology, crosses over the ascendant or goes through the sign of Sagittarius or over the ascendant of the United States, which is a Sag rising country, like lockstep, we have massive whistleblowing disclosures and hearings and divulgences of stuff. So last year in September through to the end of November, or into early December, maybe it was late September into early December, asteroid Urania was tracking through Sag then. And that was that big kerfuffle with all of the strange plasma blobs / drone-like objects moving through not just the eastern seaboard of the United States, but also occurring all over the United States, including in the Pacific coast.
When working with asteroids, I think you should probably still keep the standard planets at the core of your work because they symbolize the core impulses and faculties of the human being. But you can add in asteroids to get more information about what's coming, as Lori will now show.
I know certain things are happening next year in April that are going to impact China and Taiwan. Basically, the energy here in April of 2026, it corresponds to the transit of Saturn through the sign of Aries. And historically, that's tracked back to the Cultural Revolution in the end of the 60s. And then later on, the taking over of Hong Kong by China. So every time we have that 30-year transit or so of Saturn tracking through the sign of Aries, we see some major events in China geopolitically and within its country itself. And so that's to be expected that something may occur. And as we move towards next April, you're going to see a couple of things happening. In January, before we get to April, when Saturn and Mars will co-join in Aries, we're going to see Mars die in the heart of the sun in January, meaning he's conjunct the sun. And he does this every 2 years in a different sign. Now, Taiwan has a sun in Capricorn as a 1912 chart nation. And so any placement in a geopolitical placement, like a country that has strong Capricorn placements, like I think you mentioned United Kingdom has a midheaven in Capricorn, that those places, those people, those situations are under incredible intensity because where Mars is incinerated in the sun and then dies, major changes will occur. And Mars is exalted and a little over the top in Capricorn, and he's the god of war as well. And so this is indicating major confrontation for Taiwan over the 2 years that follow the January Kazemi. Over the next 2 years, Taiwan's sun is under duress. Nothing will stay the same. It could be Taiwan's leadership is changing dramatically, right? It could be there's a war or that China's trying to take over again. And so we'll have to see what happens. Then later on in April, we're going to see Mars tracking into or bumping into around April the 21st or so into Saturn. And of course, Mars and Saturn, double malefic energy in Aries, is something that's going to be occurring, to be paid attention to be suggesting some serious difficulties regarding the stories of China, like whatever China is up to. Now, it's only because it tracks with historical record with major changes in China. China is an Aquarius rising nation, and Pluto is tracking over the moon directly on April of next year. The people, or the homeland, the land and homeland of China, Pluto, death and transformation, Mars, Saturn, some kind of event that looks like military excursion. For China, Aries is the third house, and that has to do with your neighbors, right? Your neighborhood, the places around you. As a political entity, it means they're going to go into a warfare energy regarding the neighborhood. Mars is there. So the neighborhood is probably Taiwan. And with, Gong Gong still hanging out, the sea serpent in Pisces, a lot of stuff around water events are going to be challenging at this time as well. And the North Node as well in Pisces. So wanting to water expand, I would suggest maybe we're looking at not a war in Taiwan at the time, but rather a blockade or some kind of containing Taiwan. But it's also the people in play that want to get involved or not likely to want to get involved that I also wonder about. And Asteroid America will be tracking in the house of open enemies next April for China. So America as an open enemy opposing the identity of what China wants to do is a concern that China will get America all riled up and into the action, right? When America falls into a country's seventh house, there's always going to be an American fight with that country.
Just to emphasize how mind-bogglingly weird asteroids can be, I was playing around with the asteroid America, and I noticed that it had stationed retrograde at 12 degrees and 39 minutes of Aquarius on June the 19th of 2024. Now, this point happened to be almost precisely opposite my natal sun, which is at 12 degrees and 40 minutes of Leo. Station points are always worth paying attention to, especially when they closely aspect an important natal placement. Now, this is an asteroid, not a planet, so it's going to have the effect of colouring the events in my life somehow, perhaps in ways that relate to my public image and career and reputation, which is the domain of the sun and the 10th house. So I had to look back through my calendar to see what I was doing around June the 19th of 2024, and I found two things that are pretty weird. The first is that at that time, and for a few days afterwards, I was working on my monthly astrology forecast for July of 2024. And like Lori and many other astrologers, I'd seen some signals that seemed to portend violence affecting Donald Trump in July, and that would have a big effect on the US. And so I ended up giving that video this thumbnail and calling it America's Uranian Moment. I normally talk quite a lot about the US on this channel, but I don't normally put the word America in my video titles. Of course, a big Uranian moment did come in July with the attempted assassination of Trump. Now, something else that happened at that time is I did my first monthly live stream for World Astrology Report members on June the 15th. Just as the asteroid America was stationing opposite my sun. And I made this thumbnail. Of course, it was inspired by the iconic old army recruitment posters featuring Uncle Sam, the very personification of the United States of America. So just as the asteroid America was stationing in my 10th house of career, exactly opposing my sun, the concept of America was coming through my psyche and coloring my work in direct ways. Isn't that so weird? Astrology without asteroids already has the power to challenge our notions of free will and force us to reckon with the idea that our lives are far more fated than we might think. Add in asteroids, and it starts to look like everything is somehow programmed. What does the fact that all this asteroid stuff works tell us about the nature of reality?
I think it tells us that we're in a simulation. And I think this is a part of the actual algorithmic code. And I don't know that it's a literal simulation. I think the human mind has to grasp at a way to understand the thing that we seem to be doing in the place that we seem to be. And our consciousness only can wrap itself around certain things. Like this is like we seem to perceive time, although we may not actually be in something called time. And there, similarly, the asteroids are kind of like the fine programming details of what you're up to in this lifetime. Whereas the big broad brushstrokes, your planetary bodies like Mars and Venus, Jupiter et al., especially the traditional 7, which are not so generational or more can be more personal. Those planets and the 2 luminaries, the sun and the moon, are the I'd say it's like this is going to be a Picasso and it's going to be an 8x10 canvas, and these are the major stories of your life. And then the asteroids are like, and we're going to use a fleck of gold and we're going to dot it with this fine brushstroke, and then we're going to lob a, what's the guy that Jackson Pollock, then we're going to splatter all over here. But the asteroids are those fine details that tell us what some of these threads are for.
The philosopher Jason Georgiani, who I think is an extremely entertaining storyteller, even if I don't necessarily agree with him on a lot of stuff, has said some really interesting things about astrology and its implications about the nature of the universe. He suggested that the fact that astrology works implies that we live in a kind of simulacrum and that reality is essentially computational. In his book Saturnaeon, he says this: psychic abilities such as clairvoyance, remote viewing, precognition, telepathy, and telekinesis also make much more sense if we think of the world as fundamentally informational rather than material. This is also the best way to understand the empirical evidence for astrology. In a quantum computational simulacrum, where astrology is a symbol system with a function that is coded into the software, the planets and stars function like variables or nodes in a vast program. Their positions, movements, and alignments act as signals that influence the flow of information throughout the cosmos. I think that more so than any other aspect of astrology, asteroid astrology really points to the centrality of consciousness and information processing in our reality.
And why is it useful? That's the real thing for a personal reading or for the world events. It's useful because it gives you a lot of recognition that you're moving in some kind of story that's a script. And while you have agency about how you respond to some of the characters that show up and some of the events that happen and some of the places you'll go and things that you'll do, like say asteroid China is on your midheaven, you work in China, even though you're born in the United States, it literally looks like you can relax a bit. Like take your hands off the hypothetical wheel, not be so gripping control of your destiny because maybe you don't have all the control. I think I'm responding to the terrain that my car is moving through. Either consciously or unconsciously. And I can choose to be response able as opposed to, not.
We moderns love to think that we're completely in control of our lives, making all of our decisions with free will. What astrology, and particularly asteroid astrology, forces us to reckon with is that our lives are far more fated than we like to think. That isn't the same thing as saying they're completely fated or that we don't have any room to shift outcomes. A lot of people don't like the idea that their life might be shaped mostly by fate and destiny. I think that Christian or post-Christian people tend to have strong reactions against this idea, and this goes right back through the history of the church. The church was generally opposed to astrology because it thought it worked against the notion of free will. If you aren't free, you can't sin, you can't repent, and you don't deserve grace or punishment, and the last judgment becomes meaningless.
I have never talked to a decent astrologer after working with thousands of clients as I have, who hasn't come up against this fate versus free will question mark. It will haunt every single astrologer if they work with real people. I also would look at it like planetary alignments that look like events that are coming your way. Every planet has levels of expression, right? So Neptune can be everything from addictive and mental health challenges, escapism, or, going mad, because you're like, there's a fine line between mystical and mad. Or it can, it has a range. It has a range like octaves of expression. So not only do we have some movement around how we express an archetype in our chart, right? I can take Mars and I can be murderous, or I could be passionately championing something. And so How we express the energy is more where we have the range of motion, but the energy is there to be expressed one way or the other.
All right, that's basically it for this video. Thank you so much to Lori for joining me this time. If you want to know more about asteroid astrology, well, she's got you covered.
Where can you find me, you asked, Dan? You can find me at lunaticastrology.com, Lunatic Astrology on YouTube, Lunatic Astrology at Substack. I'm everywhere. But I do this free course. Everyone can grab my free course, and it's called the Amazing Asteroids course. And it has been taken by over 6,000 people who are now asteroid junkies. It's free. It shows you how to go for free software. You can find your asteroids, and I teach you how to do that. And I give you a master list of asteroids to work with as well. But it's a fun course for people who want to go down the fate and free will rabbit hole as well. Because once you find the asteroids in your chart connected to mom and dad and family and places you live, you start to recognize that some of your life story isn't all about what you choose. It's what chooses you.
All right, for members of World Astrology Report, we are now going to take a look at the astrology around Charlie Kirk's recent murder, and in particular, what asteroids have to say about Kirk's destiny and that fateful day in September, because honestly, it's pretty spooky. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon.